Learning goals. Welcome to this learning session on extracting and interpreting data from tables. In this course, we shall address Introduction to Data Tables, Analyzing Data Trends, Identifying Specific Data, Real-World Data Examples, Best Practices for Interpretation. There will be a quiz at the end to test your knowledge. Introduction to Data Tables. Data tables are fundamental tools for organizing and presenting information in a structured format, making complex datasets accessible and understandable. They allow for quick comparisons and identification of patterns across different categories or time periods. Mastering the ability to read and interpret these tables is a crucial skill in many fields, from scientific research to business analysis. When working with tables, it is paramount to read all labels, headers, and units carefully to avoid misinterpretations. Figures presented in tables are often rounded to a certain number of decimal places or significant figures, which can sometimes lead to slight anomalies when performing calculations or comparing totals. For instance, a total might not perfectly sum up its rounded components. Understanding the context and source of the data is also vital, as it influences the reliability and applicability of the information. Always check for footnotes or source citations, as these provide critical details about how the data was collected and processed. General Election Data Overview. Tables are composed of rows and columns, each serving a specific purpose in organizing data. Rows typically represent individual records or categories, while columns represent specific attributes or variables for those records. Headers at the top of columns and along the side of rows define the content within each cell. Consider the General Election Data Table, which presents voter numbers for different political parties across 3 election years. Each row corresponds to a specific election year, 2010, 2015, 2017, and each column represents a political party, CON, LD, LD, PC-CNP, other, or the total number of voters. The figures are given in millions, indicating the scale of the data. The total column is particularly useful for observing overall trends in voter participation across elections. For example, the total number of voters increased from 29.69 million in 2010 to 32.2 million in 2017, suggesting a general upward trend in engagement over this period. This type of aggregated data helps in understanding broader societal patterns. Identifying trends in voter turnout. Analyzing trends involves observing how data changes over time, typically looking for patterns of increase, decrease, or stability. In the context of the general election data, the total number of voters showed an upward trend from 2010 to 2017, indicating increasing participation. This upward movement suggests a growing engagement in the democratic process during this period. It is important to distinguish between significant trends and minor fluctuations. Small, isolated changes in data points may not represent a long-term trend and should be interpreted cautiously. For example, a slight dip in one year followed by a recovery might just be noise rather than a reversal of a broader trend. Voter turnout in general elections is a critical indicator of civic health, with many factors influencing participation, such as political climate, candidate popularity, and major national or international events. Historically, turnout in many Western democracies has seen fluctuations, often influenced by the perceived importance of the election. For instance, the 2017 UK general election, following the Brexit referendum, saw a higher turnout than the 2015 election. Interpreting house price trends. The average house price table provides a clear illustration of how economic data can be tracked over time across different regions. This table specifically shows average house prices in January for various UK countries from 2011 to 2017, measured in thousands of British pounds. Such data is vital for economic analysis, policy making, and individual investment decisions. To extract specific information, locate the intersection of the relevant row and column. For example, to find the average house price in Scotland in January 2014, you would read along the Scotland row and down the 2014 column, which reveals £127,000. This precise method ensures accurate data retrieval. Analysing trends requires observing the progression of values over several periods. For Wales, the house prices were relatively flat from January 2011 to January 2013, 128, 127, 128, indicating little change. However, from January 2013 to January 2017, the prices showed a consistent upward trend: 128, 132, 136, 140, 146, reflecting a period of growth in the Welsh housing market. Accurately extracting specific data is key to data analysis. This involves locating the intersection of rows and columns to retrieve the exact value needed. The ability to accurately extract specific data points from a table is fundamental to any data analysis. This involves precisely locating the intersection of a row and a column to retrieve the exact value needed. For instance, finding the average house price in Scotland for January 2014 requires identifying the Scotland row and the 2014 column, yielding £127,000. When describing trends, it's crucial to articulate both the direction and the period of change. For the average house price in Wales, the trend was initially flat from 2011 to 2013, showing minimal variation. Subsequently, from 2013 to 2017, it exhibited a clear upward trajectory, indicating consistent growth. It's important to note that small isolated changes, such as the slight dip from 128 to 127 in Wales between 2011 and 2012, are generally too minor to be considered a significant trend on their own. Trends are typically identified by sustained patterns over multiple data points, not by single fluctuations. Global Population Aging Analysis. This table presents the percentage of the population aged 65 or over for 5 different countries from 2012 to 2016. This demographic data is crucial for understanding societal shifts, planning for healthcare, social security, and economic development. An aging population can have significant implications for a country's workforce and public services. To identify the country with the lowest percentage for the 5 years, one must scan all values across all countries and years to find the absolute minimum. Similarly, to find countries with a percentage over 20% in 2012, you would focus specifically on the 2012 column and identify all countries whose values exceed 20.0%. Calculating the greatest increase requires comparing the 2012 and 2016 values for each country and then identifying which country has the largest difference. For example, the United States increased from 13.6% to 15.2%, a change of 1.6 percentage points. Japan, however, shows a more significant increase from 24.3% to 26.9%, a change of 2.6 percentage points, highlighting a rapid demographic shift. Best practices for table interpretation. Effective data interpretation from tables relies on a systematic approach. Always begin by understanding the table's overall purpose, its source, and the meaning of all headers and units. This foundational understanding prevents misreading and ensures that any conclusions drawn are based on accurate information. When analyzing trends, look for consistent patterns over multiple data points, rather than focusing on isolated fluctuations. Trends can be upward, downward, or flat, and identifying these patterns helps in forecasting and understanding underlying dynamics. Remember that small changes may not signify a true trend. Finally, always consider the broader context of the data. What external factors might influence these numbers? Are there any known biases or limitations in the data collection? Critical thinking beyond the raw numbers enhances the depth and validity of your interpretations, allowing for more informed decision-making.
Summary. Well done. You have completed the course Extracting and Interpreting Data from Tables. You should now be familiar with Introduction to Data Tables, Analyzing Data Trends, Identifying Specific Data, Real-World Data Examples, Best Practices for Interpretation. Should you need to revisit any of the topics in this course, please use the menu at the bottom of the screen.